Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Salinas. I'm a computer science master's student from Tecnologico de Monterrey, Mexico. And well, today I'm going to present to you this project. Its name is Sentiment Analysis of COVID-19 Vaccine Responses in Mexico. This project was developed as a final project from one of my courses named Data Analytics, and it also was developed as a team next to my classmate Carlos Flores and with the guidance of my professors, Dr. Hector Ceballos and Dr. Francisco Cantu. Okay, so first I'm going to start talking about the problem definition and the motivation that led us to develop this project. So around March from this year, several vaccines started to arrive to Mexico against COVID-19. And since then, there have been very different opinions within the Mexican population about these different vaccines. And also, there has been a decision of whether to take the vaccine or not. And there has been some vaccine hesitancy. We know that the lack of vaccination in Mexico has led to an increase of COVID-19 infection and also to the number of deaths. And well, we also know that nowadays information gets around very quickly thanks to social media. And well, this information impacts the people who receive it, and these people who receive this information also have a response, and therefore we create more information like in a cascade process. Given this information that we know, we believe that social networks have had a great impact in the opinions of the Mexican population about the different vaccines that have been available in Mexico. So throughout this project, what we wanted to answer is what is the overall opinion and the topics discussed of the Mexican population in social networks towards these different vaccines that have been available, and also to know whether if there are specific factors such as particular individuals, regions, and or special dates that affect these opinions. The objective of answering these questions is to provide a first step into finding insights about the possible causes of vaccine hesitancy in Mexico, and in this way, after we identify this, to number the ways in which this situation may be approached. So what we did in order to answer these questions was a sentiment analysis based on COVID-19 vaccines related tweets. And this diagram shows an overview of the project that we developed. We can start right here from the top left. The first thing that we did is to gather our Twitter data. We used the Twitter Developer API for this. After that, we used a couple of filters in order to create our datasets. First, we used some keywords in order to obtain only the tweets that were related to the vaccines. And we also applied a filter of a geographical radius. We englobed the part of only Mexico in order to obtain the tweets that were from Mexico. And after this, we obtained 5 different datasets. We had datasets for CanSino, Sinovac, Sputnik, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca vaccines. And we selected these 5 vaccines because they were the ones that were present during that time. And after that, we did some processing of the data in order to remove the retweets, hashtags, and spaces that are present normally within tweets. And finally, we
আমার তো ফোন থেকে কানেক্ট করছি আর কি, তো এর লাগি আমি কি জানি হেদিকে কয়টা সময় যাবি চেম্বারের দিকে। হ্যাঁ, আমার ফোন করিস, আমি তাহলে গেটের সামনে দাঁড়াবো। ঠিক আছে, ঠিক আছে, এই নাম্বারটা করিস, হ্যাঁ, কারণ আমার ফোনে তো জুম, তো এটা করিস। ঠিক আছে, ঠিক আছে।
Okay, so I will continue. Well, and finally, we translated these process tweets from Spanish to English. And afterwards, we focused on the sentiment analysis for each of these data sets. First, we assigned the polarity and subjectivity measures to the tweets. And after these measures were applied, we were able to classify the tweets into neutral, positive, and negative classes. Based on this sentiment analysis, once each of the data sets were updated with their respective sentiments, we proceeded to do the text mining, the EDA, and the social network analysis. First, I'm going to start with the text mining. In this part, we developed from our data sets word clouds, n-grams, and we also did an LDA topic modeling. And for the part of the EDA and the social network analysis, we just processed the data in a way that we could visualize it to find patterns or important figures. And we created the networks using the Gephi software. And well, it's important to mention that all of these processes, except for the networks, were created using libraries from the Python programming language. And well, for the first results, we have an overall of the sentiments that were obtained for each of the vaccine data sets. We can see that the most predominant sentiment was neutral across all vaccine data sets. We can see that in this bar graph, neutral sentiment is the one in the blue bar. So yeah, we can see that this was the most predominant sentiment. We can also see that the vaccine with the highest percentage of positive tweets was CanTu. We can see that in this green bar, which refers to the positively classified tweets. This is the one that is highest. And the vaccine with the highest percentage of negative tweets, on the other hand, was AstraZeneca. We can see that in this red bar. And well, it's important to mention that all of the analyses that I previously mentioned were carried out for each of the vaccine data sets. However, to stay on schedule, I'm going to show you the results for the AstraZeneca vaccine, which actually was our data set with the highest number of tweets. Okay, so first starting with the text mining with the word cloud specifically. Well, this is the word cloud that was obtained from the positively classified tweets. We can see in this case that there are some words that are a little bit redundant. For example, we have vaccine, vaccination, million, dose. However, if we get a closer look, we can see that, for example, we have words such as a person. Here we have Marcelo Ebrard, we have agreement and share. And then investigating a little bit further about this topic, we found out that people were talking positively about the Marcelo Ebrard's comments. He's the Secretary of Exterior Relationships in Mexico, about the agreement between the USA and Mexico to share batches of vaccines. And a topic that was also being mentioned, it was the good relationship that we're having between Mexican and the United States presidents. Then, for example, we also have the words Europe, safe, and effective. And we also investigated further and found out that there were positive comments about European countries continuing applying the AstraZeneca vaccine and mentioning that it was safe and effective against COVID-19. On the other hand, the word cloud that resulted from the negatively classified tweets was a little bit clearer. For example, here we don't have as many redundant words, and we have big words like side effect, risk, blood clot, and thrombosis, and well, this clearly makes us infer that well, the reports of the side effects related to thrombosis related to AstraZeneca vaccine was the highest concern among people. Then for the 2 gram, we actually get a confirmation of this, of the relevance of this topic. We can see that the main results are related to to the blood clots, the side effects, 60 years, blood clots. And well, this makes us confirm that, well, the highest topic about this vaccine were these related data sets. Here, for example, we also have United States, which makes reference to the first topic that I mentioned about the agreement between Mexico and United States. And further, with the text, the LDA modeling, sorry, well, we further confirm this. We get this topic as well. Just the difference is that we get more words in order to make a better inference about the data. And now passing to the EDA. Where we analyzed several aspects in this part of the project. For example, in this case, we analyzed the number of tweets that were obtained by day from March to April, and we can see that this peak corresponds to March 16. This was the day with the highest number of tweets about the AstraZeneca vaccine. And we also investigated further what happened regarding this vaccine on this date. And we found out that this day was the announcement of the upcoming acquisition of vaccines. So that is why people were having more activity in Twitter, because this announcement was carried out. Something that we could also see from this data is that there is a weekly trend in the number of tweets. For example, here we have some peaks that then fall down. And we found out that these peaks corresponded to weekdays, and when it fell down, it corresponded to dates on the weekends. So what we can infer from this is that this topic was being discussed more during the weekdays. Something that we did was to separate our data set only to obtain the tweets from March 16, so we could quantify the percentage of sentiments. And we found out that the AstraZeneca vaccine had a higher percentage of negative tweets and a lower percentage of positive tweets on the day with the highest number of tweets. This makes us infer that people were not as happy about the announcement that the AstraZeneca vaccine was coming. Something that we further analyzed were the number of tweets by state. And in this part, we found out that the states with the highest number of tweets were Puebla, San Luis Potosí, and Querétaro, which are states that are located near the center of the country. And well, some topics that we found out that were being discussed specifically by these countries is, for example, in the case of Puebla, the announcement that the vaccine would be suspended was discarded. For the case of San Luis Potosí, we found out that the main topics were the announcements about the vaccine being linked to thrombosis cases. And the case of Querétaro was a little bit different, since the vaccines were packaged and distributed from the states. So this was the main topic that was being discussed. And we also did the same thing of separating these data sets so we could see the overall sentiment from each of the states. And we found out that also the most predominant sentiment for these countries, for these states, was negative. Although the difference was smaller, we can see that overall from these states, the response was mainly negative. And now for the social network analysis, right here we have the graph that we obtained for AstraZeneca. This graph has nodes and edges, where the nodes represent Twitter users. The edges, represent the replies that were obtained by these users. And well, this network is filtered by its in degree, and also the nodes they correspond to the in degree. For example, these big nodes correspond to the users that had the most replies. And each of the labels for the nodes represents the Twitter user ID. So we investigated about these two large nodes that we can see here, and we found out that the ID with the highest in degree corresponded to Marcelo Ebrard, who is again the Secretary of Foreign Affairs in Mexico. And the second one was Doug Ford, who is the Ontario Prime Minister. And this was, well, in the case of Marcelo Ebrard, this made sense because Marcelo Ebrard is the one that has a lot of communication about the vaccines. But the case of Doug Ford was a surprise, and we actually investigated these results, and we found out that during that time, Doug Ford was actually very positive about the acquisition of vaccines. He was supporting that the United States was sharing the vaccines with its neighboring countries, namely Mexico and Canada. And well, in the specific case, the politicians were the figures that had the greatest impact within the network, but we also found out in other vaccine datasets that also scientists and journalists had a very great impact in this type of topics. So for the part of the discussion, we can say that we obtained very good information throughout this framework about the population's opinions about each of the different vaccines. And well, this again may help to identify the possible cases of why people don't want to get their vaccine. And by identifying these points, we can provide a starting point to tackle this issue that social networks may have created. We also found that we had some limitations during the development of this project. For example, the part of the radius that was specified. Well, since Mexico has an irregular form and the radius is circular, we had a little bit of trouble because some regions of Mexico had to be left out, and some other regions were included. For example, small regions of the neighboring countries. And well, this introduced some noise to our data. And well, another limitation is that these results are limited to the second wave of COVID-19 infections in Mexico, which correspond to about the first trimester of this year. And well, we also verified or studied related work. And we found out that something that is different about our study is that we treat our data first in Spanish, then we translate it to English, whereas several studies gather tweets limited to the English language, therefore obtaining information from different countries. This could also introduce some noise to the data because also data from other countries may be included. And well, we know that the pandemic situation has been different for each of the countries. And what we also found out is that some other works use additional analytical methods such as population segmentation, and they have been treating more sentiment classes, not only positivity, negativity, and neutrality. We also found out that there were studies that were specific on the disinformation rate regarding vaccination, and we believe that these approaches could be very useful for us to implement for our specific project in the future. So as a conclusion, we can say that this overall framework of developing a sentiment analysis based on Twitter data, coupled with EDA, text mining, and social network analysis, overall provides a good insight on the general opinion of a population. And specifically talking about the vaccines, we could observe that although the greater percentage of tweets were of neutral sentiments, we could observe that, for example, the announcements about the vaccines that had a negative response were due to the divulgation of their possible side effects. So this helps us to understand the behavior of our population and to be able to later identify and to avoid the phenomenon of vaccine hesitancy. For our future work, we would like to add negativity and positivity to the connections between Twitter users in the social network analysis. So we are able to identify the important figures that are important for each of the poles, negative and positive. And we would also like to include additional filters for the data in order to avoid the redundant words that sometimes appear in the text mining approaches. We would also like to include more sentiments for the tweets classification and also to add more vaccines. And finally, and most importantly, to study the relationship between vaccination rates and the classification of tweets. This would be to be able to visualize what is the impact of social networks in the actual vaccination rates, so we can see if there can be something that can be done about this issue. Okay, so thank you very much. Do you have any questions?